Although many guitar teachers talk about secret shortcuts and concepts that are hidden from the average guitar player, the reality is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to mastering the fretboard. Some people love caged, some love the number system, or even the letter system. 3-note per string scales, or me, I love the diagonal pentatonics. All of our brains work in different ways, and sometimes a different and fresh look helps something click that never did before. There are some really excellent smaller triad shapes that help to connect scales and arpeggios across the neck. And whether you're playing them as single note lines or as chords accompanying a rhythm or a cowboy chord guitarist, these triad shapes will get you a lot of mileage on the fretboard. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you a 3-step process to master triads on the 3 thinnest strings. Let's jump in. There are 3 basic types of triads in any major key: major, minor, and diminished. These are the 3 qualities of chords that naturally happen in the major scale by stacking every other note. So for this lesson, I'm going to assume that you already know and understand the major scale, and that it's built of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, and that any major scale contains 7 different notes. And finally, that we build chords from this scale as well. Let's simplify a little bit and we'll use the simplest key, the key of C. Oh, and really don't miss the 3rd approach to triads, because this is the one that instantly sounds musical. It's really the special sauce of the pros. So approach number 1, we need to be able to see our triads in 3 different inversions. Root position. So root position simply means that the root note will be the lowest note in the chord. Let's play a C major chord at the 5th fret. So that's a C major triad, and that'll be frets 5, 5, 3 on the 3 thinnest strings. That's root, 3rd, and then 5th. So we actually need to be able to make this shape into a minor triad as well, and also a diminished. So to make it a minor triad, we simply need to lower the 3rd by moving it down 1 fret towards the headstock. That's a C minor triad. Let's now make it diminished. In order to make it a diminished triad, we need both a lowered 3rd and a lowered 5th. So let's move the 5th down a half step. It's a little bit stretchy, but that gives us a C diminished triad. Great, so let's do the same thing for the 1st inversion triad. The 1st inversion C major triad on these strings will be, that's a 9, 8, 8. And basically the 1st inversion just has the 3rd of the C major chord as the lowest note of the triad. So we have the 3rd, the 5th, and then the root in this shape. Let's go ahead and turn this C major triad into a C minor by lowering the 3rd down 1 half step. There is our C minor triad, 8, 8, 8. Then let's lower the 5th, and that will give us a diminished triad. That's the flatted 3rd, the flatted 5th, and the root 8, 7, 8 for the fret numbers. I want to mention there is a nice PDF of all these shapes in the link in the video description. So make sure to watch the full video, and then later you can download it after. Now we are on to the 2nd inversion. And the 2nd inversion simply means that the 5th is the lowest note of the chord. And you might recognize this guy as part of the D shape from the D chord down here, a classic open D chord. The order of the notes are going to be the 5th, the root, and then the 3rd on top. So we'll make this into a minor, 5th, root, and then lower that 3rd. That's 12, 13, 11. And then we'll make it diminished. That's flatted 5th, root, and the flat 3rd, 11, 13, 11. So you might take a couple of moments in your practice to transition between these 3 chord shapes, all on the 3 qualities. So major to major to major, like even to the higher octave one. And then minor, minor, minor. and even diminished, diminished, diminished. Really nice. You'll want to know and memorize these shapes because they are going to come in handy later. So, all right, let's move on to stage 2 out of 3. What we need to do now is learn to confidently play these triads through the major scale. So for today, we will stick with the key of C major, but you will eventually want to play the triads in all 15 logical major scales. Let's start with the root position of the C major chord. And what we're going to do is play the triads through the key of C major. Thinking back to our theory knowledge, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, back to C in our C major scale. And we have triads that we can build from each note inside of any major scale. The 1 is a major triad, the 2 is a minor triad, 3 is a minor triad, 4 is a major triad, 5 is a major triad, 6 is a minor triad, and 7 is that pesky diminished triad. And then it just comes back to the 1 and other major triads. And these triads are naturally occurring inside of any major scale or major key. Now let's actually apply these to the fretboard. So we're going to use each of the shapes that we used earlier. And let's start in root position. So we've got a C major triad. When we move up, we've got a D minor triad, an E minor triad after that, F major triad, G major triad, A minor triad, B diminished triad, back to C major triad. So those are all the triads in root position in C major on the 3 thinnest strings. Let's do the same thing with the first inversion triads, and those are the ones that have the 3rd as the lowest note. So C major triad, move up, we need a D minor triad, E minor triad, F major triad, G major triad. Now this starts to get a little bit high, so if you want to just drop down 12 frets or an octave, you can totally do that. A minor triad will be at 5, 5, 5, B diminished triad, and then we're back to the C major triad. Finally, let's do the same with our second inversion triads. C major triad up here. So if we move up, we need a D minor triad. That's just the same one as way down here. E minor triad is next, and we're going to start to run out of space again. So don't be afraid to just jump down an octave. That's just 12 frets, right? And continue the pattern. So we got F major down here. That's 5, 6, 5. G major, A minor, B diminished triad, back to a C major triad. And I would highly advise that you sit with these triad shapes and really get them feeling extremely comfortable as part of your guitar practice. I would also challenge you to play each one of the inversions kind of as high and as low as possible so that you cover the whole fretboard. All right, so let's dig into stage 3 of really mastering these triad shapes. What do you hear when I play this? Progressions. Yeah, that's right, progressions, like the kind that actually happen in music. Now, I decided for this video that we should use one of the most popular progressions of the last 50 years, and that's the 1, 5, 6 minor, 4 progression. Tons of other great progressions in music, and you might even consider stealing progressions from some of your favorite songs and using those as tools for your practice. So we could totally grab the chord progression and stay with the same inversion for each progression. However, that gives us this kind of effect. By no means is there anything wrong with it, but honestly, it doesn't have the best voice leading. So unless you really want to slide around and use that part of your sound, let's use all the triads that are closest together instead. Our previous work in this lesson is really going to come in handy to feel like you're able to access each of the shapes. And as I said earlier, you can click the link below and download the diagrams if you'd like to maybe print those off and play along with them after watching. And maybe even you want to watch again with the diagrams printed so you can follow along. So just so we are on the same page, our 1, 5, 6 minor 4 progression in the key of C major is going to give us the chords C, G, A minor, and F. And so let's start with the C in root position at the 5th fret. And the next step in the process is to look for the closest G. And it happens to be on the 3rd fret of the high E string. So in order to play a G major chord here, we're going to need to use the 1st inversion shape. Now, that's 2 out of 4 of the chords. Where is the closest A? Well, we could play it on the 2nd fret of the G string, but that's going to be too far away. Instead, let's use the 5th fret of the high E string. And we'll again play a 1st inversion chord. So we're going to play frets 5, 5, and 5. Finally, we're looking for the F chord. The coolest part about this is that the F is really only 1 note different from the A minor. So we just moved the E on the B string up a half step, and we have an F chord in 2nd inversion. This is fantastic voice leading between the chords, and because we're using absolutely the closest chord shapes, it's the best voice leading. Now what you want to do is make sure to either write this down for yourself or use my diagrams. I'm really a huge fan of writing down chords and scales on blank fretboards. It really helps you remember the patterns and visualize them better. So what we will do now is the exact same chord progression, but let's start up the neck on the 1st inversion C triad. That's 9, 8, and 8. That's our C major triad. So the closest G is going to be based on the G on the 8th fret of the B string, and we'll play that little D looking shape, right? 7, 8, 7. Now the next chord is A minor. The closest A is the 10th fret of the B string. We'll play 9, 10, 8 for the A minor chord. Then finally, just like in the last set of chord changes, just move the E note up a half step to F, and you have an F major chord. 10, 10, 8. Our final set for this progression, we'll start with the C major that looks like the little D up here. 12, 13, 12. And if we want the closest G triad, let's play 12, 12, 10. The A minor will be the same inversion, just up a whole step. And make it minor. That's 14, 13, 12. And finally, to make that F chord, just raise your E on the high E string up a half step, and you have the notes of an F major triad. I highly recommend you apply these to the backing track that I included for you guys in the free download below. Strum them all once, arpeggiate them, decorate them, find the music in them. And make sure to practice in other keys and other progressions as well. Now that you've learned 3 ways to work on triads across the neck, check out this video next to see how you can simplify the cage system with just 3 simple shapes to allow you to play scales across the entire guitar neck without overthinking complex patterns.